Hey guys, Mark here, Myrtle Beach Generators. So I've got a lot of questions about the Guardian series Generacs and then their new NexGens. So I kind of wanted to make a video so I can show you the differences between the two and maybe give you an idea what's better suited for you. We'll start with the Guardian series. Now this Guardian style generator has been running for many years now. I think it's at least 8 years, 8 or 12 years, I can't remember. So some of the obvious differences, we'll just go with the enclosure first. So we have a flat roof here. We have two locks, a lock here and a lock here. Whereas the NexGen is sloped, and this was easier for snow to melt off and wash away or fall off. Whereas this one, it would just pile on there. So I do like that design. As far as the exterior, there's not a whole lot of differences other than on the Guardian you have a tri-light here and you have a emergency shut-off switch on the back side, which I'll show you all of that later. That has been moved to one switch on the NexGen, so the emergency shut-off switch, and then you have 4 lights here on the side. A slightly better design. I like that better than I like this. But let's just go, just a quick overview real quick. That is how far the hood opens on the Guardian series, whereas this is how far the hood opens on a Generac. So you get a lot more head clearance here. And if you're like me, who's ever had to work on these, sometimes you'll bump your head if you're working on the backside of the engine. Some obvious changes is this new keyhole. So you only have one key lock on the NexGen generators versus the 2 on the Guardians. I do like this better. However, I will say this, the front cover on the new have 3 little holes on the bottom and then 2 little flaps here on the top. Maybe I'm partial to this old style because this has 2 pins on the bottom and then 2 little dowels here that line up in there. I understand why they changed this because these pins can break off or rot away over time if you're not familiar with them. So I'm partial to this one just because I've worked on thousands and thousands and thousands of these, and for me it's just easier to kind of have a guide and pick it up and set on its track. Whereas this one, you've kind of got to line up all 3 of the pins and keep it up and then push it down to get on the flaps. I feel like it's not as nice as that one, I think. But I'm going to take these off anyway so I can show you some of the inside. So on the Guardian series, these are a very old school engine, and I like that because I'm older and I know how to work on them, and some of the things are just more reliable than today's newer technologies. For example, these spark plug wires are connected to magnetos, which essentially is an ignition coil that's activated by a magnet that's mounted on a flywheel. So there is not a lot of way to get misinformation from there. With that said, these are fairly reliable as long as you're not really in a corrosive area like on the beach, because that magnet can get rusty and may eventually cause issues. However, I very much enjoy these because they're simple to install, they're fairly cheap, and they're pretty reliable. On the Guardian series, you have oil pressure switches, you have temperature switches, and that's pretty much about it in your sensor ratings. You have your mixer assembly, which is just a little actuator motor on there that is controlled by your controller. What I really like about Guardians is the fact that you have a controller with a screen. This allows customers to be able to, for example, change options, go through the menu, change your exercises, all of that. So my customer base here in Myrtle Beach is usually the 55 and up community, and a lot of people aren't thrilled with having to use their apps and phones. They just like to be able to push a button, see what's going on, clear it, start it, stop it, all those things that you want to do without having to fiddle with your phone and a login, remembering passwords, and all of that. So I love this. Whereas the new NexGen Generac doesn't have a screen anymore. You just got your manual auto off and a service button, which means you have to be in an app. You have to click service and be in your phone app in order to see information about this generator. Here in my community, with majority of our customers being 55 and up, some of them don't like that. So that's something you should know. We'll go over to this real quick. This is far more advanced. You have oxygen sensors. You have mass airflow sensors. You have intake temperature sensors. You've got oil pressure sensors, temperature sensors. You've got, gosh, I don't remember all the names. You got ignition coils. You've got a engine control module. I've always been a firm believer is the more things you have, the more subject you are to having mechanical problems. Now, I know why they're doing this. It's to make the generator more fuel efficient, meet regulations. So this is a brand new redesigned engine. It's 997 cc's, whereas the Guardian is a 999 cc. How is that good? I don't really have an answer for that. I think they had to meet a regulation and bring down the size of the engine. So I will say this, when you have a ignition coil, that means you have a computer that is controlling that ignition coil, which means you have to have a cam or a crank sensor in order to get the proper timing marks. So not only does this now have a crank sensor, you got O2 sensors, you got mass airflow sensors, you got air intake temperature sensors. You have a lot of sensors that the Guardian series did not have. Generac does not sell these sensors individually. So what that means is if you have a problem with one sensor, you have to get the entire mixer assembly or throttle assembly, whatever you want to call it, which any new production components or products, you're going to have a slight delay in parts availability. I had to order 2 of these because I had a bad temperature sensor, so I had to order two of the throttle bodies, and it did take about 2 weeks to get in. Other than that, they are more fuel efficient. So your Guardian series generators are they at 100% load burn 3.9 gallons of propane an hour. These burn 3.7 gallons of propane an hour based on a 24 kW like we're looking at here. Obviously it changes a little bit based on the size of the alternator. So essentially everything on this generator has been redesigned except for the alternator, and which is your rotor stator. Everything else is virtually brand new, which I kind of highlight some of those. Let's go back over here to the Guardian. So on your Guardian, this is your air intake. Your air intake funnels down here, and it pulls air through here. So it pulls through this panel, pulls into the fan, and then comes up to your air filter up there. On the NexGen series, your air intake is now isolated to the back side of the generator, which is through these louvers here. Why is that a benefit? Well, let's say this is installed next to your home. That means that you have 18 inches between, at a minimum of 18 inches between the back side of your generator and your house. Whereas before, you would need to make sure in storm events that this side of the generator was clear, free from debris. Lots of times people plant bushes because they have to for their HOA, and over time they will grow and start blocking airflow to this. Likely you're not going to have anything growing behind the generator, so it makes sense. The other obvious reason would be in the storm event and there is debris flying around, cardboard or whatever, and something gets sucked up to the side of it, then your generator overheats. The likelihood of something getting stuck on the back side of this generator is probably not going to happen. So kudos for that. On the Guardian series, they came with, you have to take screws out to get to the side panels and access all the panels. They were these little Allen keys here, which over time would strip. We did not like them. So they did upgrade the screws that hold your panels on, which are nice. Now all the customer connections are made behind this panel. And if you've ever installed one of these, this panel is not exactly finely fitted. So you have to take this off in order to get to the customer connection. To give you an idea on how little space you have to work on these in the field, this is where your wires come in, right here on the side, on the back side, and then you have about this much working space to get wires landed where they need to get landed. It has always been a complaint that there is just not a lot of room. You can do service loops, but it kind of bulks all of this up in here and it makes it difficult to work with. So the new style generator is different, and I'll go ahead and show you that. So these style generators now use a much beefier screw with a torque bit on it. So we'll see if that lasts any longer than the old style. Same concept, you pull this up off your pins. Now, I've already taken a couple of these screws out so we can process this a little faster. So now all your connections are done here from the top. So you have your wires that come in here. You have a little bit more space to line directly to the breaker. And you have a bit more space to get to your neutrals and your grounds. And all your comm wires are down here and they're labeled. Makes it nice to be able to get in there, see everything, and you have a bit more room to work with. So I like that. One of Generac's bigger changes is this regulator setup. This is your Wi-Fi module. We'll talk about that shortly, but this regulator setup, I really love that they made a piece that we can directly screw into with a flexible whip that they all come with. If your generator installer company did not install this whip, they've done it wrong. Anything that connects to this generator needs to be flexible. That includes the wiring, should have a flexible conduit, at least for 2-3 feet, and it needs to have a flexible gas line. This vibrates, and if you go straight in here with rigid pipe over time, you'll damage your pipe. So, and create a fuel leak. Always use the gas whip. So I do like this because this allows you to get a shutoff valve, drop a T down here for a little test port, and go right in, or you can go right into it and do that elsewhere. But I like that a lot. This is their now double fuel regulator. I hope this works out well. It's still very early on in production, so I haven't seen any issues with this. They did have a safety recall about one of these bolts being stripped. Thankfully, before we take any out to install, we always check them. And we it's a fast process because we already have to take off all of these panels to get the screws out that bolt this generator to the pallet. That is one thing I do not like about the NexGen generators, is because we have to disassemble the thing in order to get it off the pallet. And anytime you're taking little screws in and out, yeah, you're subjecting yourself to some possible damage. We'll put that back in there. On the Guardian series, they used an atmospheric pressure regulator. I know I've talked about this a couple times in some previous videos, but essentially the engine creates a suction which travels down these fuel lines, which pulls on a diaphragm in here that opens a little valve to allow fuel to flow. This does not regulate the pressure, it just allows fuel flow. So if you have a Generac generator that you've had 1100 error codes on, it's probably not this. It's the regulator on the line itself. This does not regulate fuel pressure. It only allows fuel to flow into the mixer. Some people have had problems with these because these little holes here to allow air to go in and out for the diaphragm. Little bugs like to make a nice little home in here, like mud daubers and things like that. Although very rare, I've never actually had to replace one of these. I've had to replace shutoff valves, but I've never had to replace one of these. And so we'll see how the new version's reliability stacks up against this. So the next thing I want to tell you about is this little doohickey right here. On the Guardian series, this is your Wi-Fi assembly. This is what connects the generator to your home Wi-Fi and allows you to use the Mobile Link app. They also have cellular modules that you can put in its place so you can have cellular connection at any time. The reason why Wi-Fi and cellular are two different things, or they offer two different things, is let's say you lose power and the generator doesn't start. Guess what's not working? Your Wi-Fi. So therefore, that app that you have on Mobile Link, it can't communicate with the generator, so you don't know what's going on with it. Makes it hard for dealers to monitor generators when they just disappear. They can't send any alerts or alarms or anything because now your house is out of power and now you don't have any Wi-Fi, so this can't connect. So the NexGen generators utilize a cellular module with a Wi-Fi option. The reason this is good is, let's say you lose power and your generator doesn't start. That's okay. It can still communicate with Generac or your dealer manager or your app on your own phone if you self-monitor. So that's a great thing to have, especially if you travel a lot and you want to know if your generator came on because you heard there was a storm or something's wrong. You will still get the information. It will also use Wi-Fi as a backup. Let's say the cellular signal's down and it's set up on your Wi-Fi. It can also use that as well. So I do like that every new generator comes with this now, which is wonderful. I will say this, if you are using a generator company like, I don't want to really name any names, but there's a couple out there that charge monthly for their monitoring or their monitoring device. I just want you to know these come with it. So if you're paying extra for it, you're getting ripped off. So that's my brief side-by-side comparison. So just a brief overview is 999cc with very old technology magnetos, tried and true. 997cc now has a controller and an engine control module, a bit more fuel efficient, but you have a varying number of sensors that may affect the reliability of it. We've put in roughly about 50 of them and had some nuisance problems in about 8 to 10 of them. Good news is Generac does stand behind their products, so either way you go, they've got you covered, which is nice. Not a lot of companies do that. It makes it very simple for Generac, certified Generac installers and maintenance and repair people are very familiar with this, but can easily call and are authorized to fix and repair these pretty quickly. In order to be a service dealer, you have to stock parts for it. So there's a service kit that we already have in stock that comes with all the basic parts for this. When you have any generator, you have to think about maintenance and the maintenance cost that go along with that. So much like your car, where you have 5,000 miles or every 1 year, very similar. So you have a 200-hour 1 year on your Guardian series generators. It is important that if you have one of these, that you get the valve lash checked, once every few years. It doesn't need to be an every year maintenance thing. Most people that maintenance these on a regular basis can hear when it needs a valve adjustment. It's not running right, or you can hear it popping in the intake. That's when you know you're definitely going to need a valve adjustment. On the new NexGen generators, they're hydraulic lifters, so there is no valve adjustment for you to make. You don't ever have to do that. Most maintenance and service companies charge to do a valve adjustment on top of what your annual maintenance would be. So you do get to reduce some cost. As far as noise level goes, these run at 67 decibels. These run at 67 decibels. There really isn't any improvement in noise. Here is one improvement I can tell you about. The lid. The lid itself no longer has these foam pads. And if you are a Guardian owner, you already know that sometimes these pads can fall off and they'll land on the exhaust and they'll melt a little hole in there. It stinks, and then you have to re-glue these things with some 3M spray. We don't have that. We have now a double-walled roof, which is great. So a little bit less demanding of your attention. Each generator has lifting points for your installer to use their generator cart in order to move the generator around safely. There's little holes right here on the front and the back side. The same thing with the new NexGen. There's holes here and here that run all the way through the back. Inside the generator information packet, they send little caps for it. So make sure your installer has put them in, or you get them when you do your generator install. These are you get 4 of them with the Guardian series because all 4 holes are on the exterior of the unit. You only get 2 of them on the NexGen because only the back 2 holes are exposed to the exterior. These 2 front holes will be covered by your front cover. So keep that in mind as well. So everybody always asks, well, what's the reliability of the NexGen generators? And the answer is, I don't know. Unfortunately, they were released back in November, so we've only got about 6 or 7 months into having this product. Everybody knows that a first year model anything is kind of subject to bugs here and there until we get all those worked out. What I can tell you is they made leaps and bounds with the Guardian series to being one of the most reliable Generac generators out there, and I love this generator. If they put the same amount of attention into this as they have this over the years, I don't have any doubt on the reliability. As far as install, the ease of install, they're about the same. You're trading some conveniences for others. So, for example, when I take this off the pallet, I don't have to disassemble it in order to get it off the pallet and safely move it to its location. This, I have to disassemble it in order to get it off the pallet, and I have to leave the front cover off to move it around. So when a front cover is leaning up against something while you're trying to move this around and the wind blows and knocks it over, there's potential for damage there. So I don't like that. However, I do like the fact that there's more room to make all your customer connections, whereas this has very limited room. So I don't like that it doesn't have a screen. I love that about this. I love that they moved this switch from back here to the side. I don't like the auxiliary shut-off switch placement on the Guardian, but I love it on the NexGen. Please feel free to comment. I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. I'm in no way a Generac savant. I don't know everything yet, but I'll get there with it. But feel free to comment, and I'll try to answer as quickly as I can. You can always give us a call at 843-457-8187, or you can email us at info@mb-gen.com. Thanks, guys. You have a great day.